Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. Today, we will be venturing off into other subjects for the first time in quite a while. And this case is a case that I have been following very closely. Today, we'll be talking about the University of Idaho killings. We're going to be providing an update on many things and information that has been released or being talked about since the arrest of a suspect. But just to give a quick overview for those completely unfamiliar with the case, in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, 4 University of Idaho students were fatally stabbed in their off-campus residence in the town of Moscow, Idaho. On December 30th, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Koberger was arrested in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. And interestingly, I have a connection to Monroe County, Pennsylvania, and I even feel like I may have seen this suspect around town. That is very, very close to a cabin that I own in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. Brian was from the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania, and he was arrested on 4 counts of murder in the first degree and felony burglary. Interestingly, the suspect is a very steeped in the world of criminology. And before we begin, however, I think it's always important that we recognize that this is a human tragedy. So I've seen many different people cover this story, and they fail to even mention the names of the students. Please remember, these are human beings. The victims were Ethan Chapin, 20, of Conway, Washington; Kaylee Goncalves, 21, of Rathdrum, Idaho; Zaina Kernodle, 20, of Avondale, Arizona. She later lived in Post Falls, Idaho; and Madison Mogan, 21, of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And, we should take a moment of silence to remember those victims before we begin. Please keep them and their friends and family in your thoughts and prayers. Now, joining us, we have a special guest today who lives in the area and lives in the area that these tragic murders took place in, and has been following this case very closely. So let's welcome Aaron. Good to see you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me on, Stephen. I'm a huge fan of the Truthseekers show.
Yeah, great. I'm so glad to have you. And just so people understand, Aaron contacted me, and tell us a little bit about you and where you live and that, so people understand why, the context, because I think that you're uniquely qualified to come here and talk about this with me because you live right there, right?
Yes, just across the street from the University of Idaho, probably about a minute and a half from where the event happened. I'm a student there. I had class canceled, was around the entire police response the whole time, and been keeping up with this case and how the public around here has been reacting.
And before we begin on some updates, because I don't know about you, but I'm finding it difficult to get new information of the suspect and what's going on with that. But before we begin, I think maybe since you live right there, it would be important to help people understand, what was the atmosphere like when the murders were sort of announced, when people started hearing about this? Was there increased police presence? Was there fear, paranoia? Were people running out and buying guns and security systems? Because, this is not something, this is a little small town. Like a quadruple murder in the middle of the night doesn't generally happen there.
No. The first time I think most people heard about it was about 4 hours after the initial 911 call. I remember distinctly the Moscow Pullman Daily News put out a Facebook post at around 4:30 in the afternoon, the day that it had happened, and people were surprised. Like I said, there was nobody really locks their doors out here.
I bet you do now, right?
yeah, like my friend don't lock their doors, and it's a very laid back atmosphere. Not a lot of bad things happen here. It's a lot of mostly families and college students. So a lot of people were kind of hesitant to even walk around the campus. And I there's a gas station across the street from here, across the street from the university, and the cashiers were spooked as well.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine, especially if you have like all night convenience store, that's gets a little scary. Somebody's running around killing people at 4 o'clock in the morning. If you're,
yes, yes.
working overnight, because you never really know. But so after that day, though, did there appear to you to be like an increased police presence at night? Was there increased patrols or?
Not for about the first 3 days. They canceled class the day following, that Monday. I think it was that Monday. They had canceled class, uh, and it wasn't. I think they put out like a press conference, and after that, it wasn't even. I didn't see the local police department really. It was the state troopers, and the way that this town is built is that there's a lot of choke points, because it's like the town goes back to the late 1800s. It wasn't built for like the population that now has. There was only so many roads, so there's a lot of choke points. Like there's maybe only like two ways you can get to the other side of town, and one of them
Yeah, well,
being
that's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
one of them being right next to where it happened. There was constantly like three patrol cars there. There was always patrol cars. I leave the library like at midnight, and even getting in my car, there's a patrol car. Driving home, there's like three more, and they're all state troopers. Uh, there. I didn't see like Moscow PD at all for a while. Um,
And
even
what was the sense? What was the sense? I'm curious. Did people think, oh, this is a targeted killing and a revenge thing, a serial killer? What was the general mood or things people were saying about this happening?
people of the first thought, because these were attractive people, they thought that it may have been an ex that that did it.
Yeah,
Well,
like a revenge killing. That's what I thought. That was my two original thoughts were that this is some kind of frustrated simp who can't get laid, or some sort of weirdo that's angry and hates women, or this is a revenge killing and the other three were just happened to be there or whatever, so he had to kill them too.
because yeah, well, before we go on, I have to say that currently I think there's a gag order for all parties involved by a Latah County judge. So therefore, like whatever we have at this point is all we're gonna have until like June, when there's more
Yeah, and
clarity.
also people will have to forgive me because I'm sort of new to true crime, so I didn't give the normal speech and I will give it now. uh, all suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. They have arrested a suspect, but he is still considered innocent until proven guilty. And let's talk about that for a minute. Do you believe that they have the right guy? What
Well,
do you think?
after all we're gonna discuss here, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
we may have gotten him, but I will say I'm sure they got. I'm pretty sure that they got the right guy. But what I'm concerned with is a thing called reasonable doubt, because there's a lot of evidence. We'll share this in a moment that you sent me. His cell phone was right near that area where the murder took place many times. There is DNA from a knife sheath left at the scene of the crime. And, you know, but I still think that, and also one of the surviving roommates saw the perpetrator, but he had a mask on. So I'm still concerned with reasonable doubt, because these are things, he could say, hey, I have insomnia, so I drive around at night and I drive in that area, or I shop near there. So that's why I was there so many times in that area. Or, and the surviving roommate seeing someone in a mask is that's reasonable doubt right there. It's a person in a mask. You saw his eyebrows and his eyes. You can't, you know, for 100% sure identify him. Don't you think that the case, they have good evidence, and I think they have the right guy, but we've seen many different cases where all it takes is one juror to say reasonable
100%.
doubt, and this guy could get off for 4 murders. That would be tragic.
Well, there's another thing that could add to the reasonable doubt. I'm not sure if you remember the grub truck footage
Yes.
from, like, it happened probably an hour to an hour and a half before the event supposedly took place. There were two of the victims were clearly intoxicated. It's a college town. There's bars
Yeah.
there's like a downtown street, and there's multiple bars along there. It's very common for people to walk intoxicated up and down and get tacos at this taco truck, and they stream live to Twitch their security footage, right? And they were waiting in line for food, clearly intoxicated, and there was somebody that came up to them. They were clothed a little bit too much. They had a hat on, they had their hood on like that.
Yeah, he was an early suspect, but apparently the police cleared him. But that's, again, reasonable doubt. Why? It could have been him, could have been this person, could have been that person.
He went to Boise that exact same night, like at, it's like a 7-hour drive down to Boise. Why would you leave to Boise at 4:30 in the morning? So that's one thing, but that was like the first thing that people thought. It was like, it was this guy, and everybody was centered in on that at first, but like you said, he got cleared.
Yeah, and let's talk for a minute, just so people are aware. At the scene of a murder, there was a leather knife sheath was left by one of the victims, and it said United States Marine Corps on it. And in the snap, or the buckle of it, is where they found a tiny speck of this Brian Kohberger's DNA. But couldn't he easily say, to raise reasonable doubt, that knife was stolen from him or something like that? And again, also on the knife sheath, I thought that him being let's talk for a minute about his background. He is got a lot of education in criminology and psychology, and apparently was fascinated with serial killers. I thought that he may have left that there as a red herring on purpose to throw off the police, so they would go looking for somebody who was a Marine or something like that. But apparently maybe he didn't clean it enough. Inside the buckle strap, inside the button is where they found a tiny speck of DNA, which they then matched to his father and then him, apparently. That's a strange thing for somebody who is so educated in criminology to make a mistake like that. So what's your take on this knife sheath? Do you think he dropped it by accident, or did he put it there to throw off the police and just didn't clean it, and the police got lucky finding a scrap of his skin cells or something on it?
It doesn't make sense. If you just by looking at him and observing his body language, you could tell his IQ is not low. Like, this guy's not I don't think he's a dumb person, but he did some, like, especially what we're going to go over. So a lot of the things were really like dumb little things that he did. It just doesn't make sense that you would leave something like a sheath with DNA on your where you did it. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I thought as well, like, if this really is his first time murdering people, especially murdering 4 people at once, like, things can get crazy. I'm sure some of the victims attempted to fight back or whatever. Maybe he faced more resistance than he thought he would or something, and dropped the knife in the heat of killing these people. It's strange, but here is some images of this Brian Kohberger, and he was a student at nearby school, right?
WSU.
And a PhD candidate in what subject?
Criminology.
That's amazing to me. Fascinating that a man who is a PhD candidate in criminology gets caught murdering 4 people. And is there some other things you can share that you've learned about Mr. Kohberger? I know that I have a connection to him, and that is, I swear he seems so familiar to me that I may have seen him in the Pocono Mountains. For those unaware, the Poconos, there's a bunch of little small towns, but there's only, as far as big box stores, let's talk about that. In the Pocono Mountains, there's like 1 Walmart, maybe 2. There's one Home Depot, maybe two. So there's not many shopping areas. I swear I've seen this guy somewhere before. He seemed incredibly familiar to me. And the Poconos is a bunch of small towns in the mountains, but the shopping centers are all, in other words, 25 small towns around the Pocono Mountains all go to the same Walmart. There's only one or two or whatever, you know? So
Yeah.
I swear that I've seen this guy before. He looks very familiar to me. And I may have seen him around the Pocono Mountains for all I know. But he's got a background in psychology and criminology, and apparently sort of a fascination with serial killers. He did this student project where he asked criminals to tell him all about how they felt going into the crime, and it just
I think he was teaching. He was teaching
yeah.
at the time, and I think he avoided the subject of what had happened during the last.
They were talking
the
about the murders in his classes, yeah, and he sort of avoided them, right?
Yes, he did. I mean, just imagine what it must be like to have been a student in his class. You go on break after the end of the semester, and you find out that your teacher's a suspect in this, right?
Yeah.
How would that feel?
Yeah, that is really crazy. And some of the other things we know about him is that he was apparently a militant vegan, of refusing to even eat food that was cooked in pots that may have one time contained meat.
Yes.
That's a little strange and may show some signs of psychological problems, maybe, to be that extreme about being a vegan. And
he claimed
go ahead.
He claimed that the reason he turned to the supposedly, like, I don't know, but there was, I think the FBI has gone back and found like threads that he had like been commenting on.
Yeah, I have a note here to talk about his online presence, which was bizarre.
He said that being vegan alleviated some symptoms, psychological symptoms of dissociation, perhaps, or what was the term used here, where he it was almost like a state of blackout, which is rather strange, but he claims that veganism alleviated those symptoms and he became militant about it as a result. So,
yeah, it's kind of a strange situation. And also, I heard some people that knew him in high school and grew up with him, and apparently this guy was not, let's just say, very lucky with the ladies, and that may lead to some sort of motive that this guy is a man-hating sort of simp or involved in that sort of movement or community. And that is, involuntary celibate. In other words, not very lucky with the ladies, and therefore some of these guys get very angry towards women. And originally, when I saw that, I thought that the murders, I thought that had to be a sex crime, but there was no signs of any sexual assault. It was just murder.
Well, from what we know, there was one of the victims who was affected, who was wounded a little more personally, where
more wounds. But I kind of disagree. Some people, for those unaware, out of the four victims, one of them was suffered more vicious wounds and more of an attack than the other three. So people speculated that was the victim and the others were just incidental because they happened to be there. That was the target. But I talked to a few people in law enforcement who told me that's not always the case. It may just be that specific victim fought back more or was harder to kill, you may say, so that may be the reason.
Could I quote some rather...
Yeah, sure. I could be wrong, sure.
Supposedly, when according to one of the eyewitnesses that was there, because I think one of them said that there was like a party supposedly going on and they thought something, or one of them supposedly claimed, again, there's a gag order, so we're not going to find out until there's more hearings. But supposedly, allegedly, as he was hurting one of the victims, the witness claimed to have heard him tell the victim, shush, I'm here, I'm going to help you, and then proceeded to hurt them after telling him that he's going to help them, which is, if whoever did it, whoever did the crime supposedly said that, which indicates absolute psychopathy. or lack of
Yeah,
inconsistency.
yeah, absolutely. And have you seen some of this guy's online presence? Because there's also various rumors that this guy may have been on Reddit arguing with people about the murders leading up to his arrest.
I've heard about that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In other words, people were saying, "Oh, this guy was the murder was this or the murder was that," and he was correcting them, talking about how the murders took place in very explicit details that were turned out to be correct. Whoever this Reddit poster was, and then interestingly, that person who was posting about the murders and arguing with people about the murders every day, after this Brian Koberger was arrested, those posts stopped completely. So this guy may have been on Reddit sick enough to argue with people about the motivations of the murderer, what kind of a person he was. You know, he was like correcting, this Reddit poster was correcting people
Yes.
about details of the murder. And then some people claim that he was talking about things that only the murderer would know, but we won't know until more details of the case emerge, if it was truly him.
One thing that I do know is that during the visual that was at the local football stadium on campus,
it looks like he was there.
No, well, I'm not sure if he was there. I know that that law enforcement was closely monitoring those who went there, because people who do these crimes tend to want to. It's almost like it's like a form of mocking their victims.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, they go to the funerals. Yeah,
like I did it, and then I went to your funeral. I went to your visual just to. It's the sick dynamic that goes on.
Well, there's actually exists one case I'm aware of where the murderer was a pallbearer at the funeral of a murder victim. In other words, he not only attended the funeral, but he carried the casket of the girl he killed. That's so people inject them. These murderers inject themselves, and they get some sort of strange psychological thrill out of being there. And there does exist a video. It's still unconfirmed if it was his or not, but a lot of people believe that this Brian Koberger attended this candlelight vigil for the victims after the murders. That's crazy.
I was not aware of that, but I did know that law enforcement was looking out for people that were going in and out of the events that they were holding.
And I know this is all speculation, but
yes,
when you saw this guy get arrested, and you know that some of the grisly details of this murder, for me, I didn't think that this was his first murder, because to go from 0 to killing 4 people at once is very, very uncommon, I would think, and extreme. Usually, there's a lead up. He'll kill 1 victim, then maybe 2, then go on to do something like insane, like 4 at once. Do you think this was his first actual murder, and we may see more, or do you think that this was his first time?
I think that if it was his first murder and he snapped, he's going to be studied by criminal psychologists for a long time coming, because you are correct. Typically, I don't think it's typical for somebody to just go out and do this to 4 people at once. But if he did snap and this was his first go at it, that for a psychologist to study, that would be something that they would really have to closely look at. What factors could have, right? This guy is particularly, I have a feeling he's going to be studied for a long time by criminal psychologists. If it is specifically, if it was his first go at this crime. I'm not sure what to think of that. He could have snapped. I said, he doesn't look like he has a lot of muscle mass to him. For him to do this to 4 people, they had to have been intoxicated. Even if they
you're talking about 3 women, and I believe 2 of them were very small and petite, and the man wasn't a big man that was murdered. So, but still, it was shocking to me first that he's a criminology student, and we're going to get into the amateur hour mistakes that he seems to have made, and second, that he would go from 0 to I'm going to go kill 4 people at once. And then there's the whole issue of he left 2 victims downstairs, one of which may be able to ID him, or at least his, voice or that seemed to be crazy to me. But to go from zero to I'm going to break in this home and there's 6 people in it and I'm going to murder people there. That seems to be first, maybe he's a very arrogant person and he thought his study of criminology would help him get away with it somehow, but it just seems very extreme to me to go from very little or no criminal background to I'm going to go in this house and kill 4 people at once.
Yes, because of the gag order going on right now, we're not sure if he was following anybody on Instagram, for example. I think I heard
There's
something
rumors, there's rumors
where
that he was following some of them,
where the family
Yeah.
claims to have found a connection with at least one of them. And if you look at the house where it happened, it's like, especially if you're driving by like a Greek row, you could see it. It looks kind of like, now it kind of stands out, right?
I think it's going to stand out for a long time. Oh, that's
And
the murder house. Yeah.
Had they just locked their door, I mean, this probably wouldn't have gone, you know what I mean? Like, unfortunately, but like, he didn't like force his way in there, and he just walked out, because people aren't used to that around here.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. And I was going to share, we could talk about the stalking, because you have a great graphic here. I'm going to share my screen. So apparently his cell phone pinged and was right near the murder scene many times.
Yes.
We have August 21st. Brian Koberger's phone is picked up close to Moscow murder house between 10:34 p.m. and 11:35 p.m. He makes it 11 subsequent visits before the November 13th murders. So 11 times he was right near the home. November 13th, Koberger's phone is picked up near the home in Pullman, Washington. Phone began to travel south through Pullman before going offline. So his phone he turns his phone off when he allegedly goes to do the murders. 4 a.m. to 4:20 a.m. is when the murders occur. 4:48 a.m., Koberger's phone pings again on Idaho State Highway 95 south of Moscow. So if we believe he's the murderer, it appears that he turned his phone off before he went in to do the murders and then turned his phone off driving home, which again is another amateur hour mistake. I would think, being so well educated in criminology, he would know that could be a problem for him later.
There's so much to unpack. There's like at least 3 points to be made here. Particularly, the first one is the August 21st, 2002. There's a point to be made there because if you've ever there's only one road from here to Boise, and about 2 or 3 days before the start of the semester, it's packed because people are coming over here, or when the semester ends, right? And the first day of the semester for the fall of 2022 was August 22nd. So the first time he pinged at the residence was literally about 8 hours before the start of class on the first day of the semester. Right.
Yeah, that's a little suspect. And
there's no reason for him to have been, and specifically in that part of town where there's nothing there. It's close to like the high end part of town or the upper class part of town, right? Where the nicer houses are, but it's like right next to campus. There's no reason for somebody who went to WSU to be in that part of town. Number one, you can't even park on that road really well because the parking situation is terrible there. And for you to be for an hour there at 10:30 the day before the start of the semester is so suspect. I can't. It's hard to wrap your mind around.
Yeah. So apparently he may have been stalking one or more of these victims, driving by their house. Maybe he was getting obsessed or obsessive about one or more of these female victims, or male victim, for all we know. The situation is strange, though. But again, to play devil's advocate, I'm worried about reasonable doubt. Could this guy have been like a Grubhub delivery driver or an Uber driver or what? Could he have some excuse for being there? Is there shopping nearby there? There's a supermarket nearby there, right? Or shopping center?
Over a year ago, I did deliver a DoorDash order to like the lot next to it. But it's just a bunch of apartments. It's a huge apartment complex to one side, It's it's apartments across the street. It's apartments behind it. There's a house next to it. There's no shopping.
So there's no real
there's
reason for him to be going down that road. Then.
No, it's all residential. It's all just an apartment complex, and that's it.
Well, I think then he's going to have a problem explaining these things and why he was so close to that house so many times. Well, it's very common, right, for murderers to stalk victims and fantasize, right? Maybe he drove there 12 times thinking about doing it, and on this fateful night, he decided to go in and do it after, fantasizing about it and thinking about it for so long.
Well, the August 21st one, it seems to me that he knew that they had come back to town or something. Like they went away for the summer and they're coming back. The semester starts the next morning, and that you're going to be there stalking them for an hour in the evening. It's plausible. It's very plausible that was the case, because it was like right before the start of the semester there.
Yeah, and there are some other very suspicious things. Like, for those unaware, right after the murders, he somehow decides that he's going to drive from Washington, all the way to Pennsylvania, right?
Well, before we move to that point, can we unpack one more point in the slide?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Can you pull up the slide again?
Oh, sure. The phone slide?
No, the route.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. And we have some on the record. We have notice of rights paperwork. No. I'm sorry. I'm not sure which one you want me to share. Let me look here.
The one with the route.
Oh, okay.
The one you were just showing.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me get it back here. Okay, I got it. Let me share my screen. Yeah, and for those unaware, so this suspect was just 10 minutes away at another school right across the state line, right?
Right, and the reason why I wanted
there's a state line between Washington and Idaho.
Yes. Now,
but it's really, see, that's where it gets deceptive and people get confused easily, right, Aaron? Because people say, well, he lived in Washington State. Why would he drive all the way to Idaho to do a murder? It's 10 minutes away. It's right on the state line.
Yes. And there's a road connecting Pullman and Moscow directly. Like you could get there in 15 minutes. Right. Now, that route that he took going 95 south down to Genesee and then going to the Washington side of that southern route, part of that route would be Uniontown. Right. You're adding an unnecessary hour to your trip. Right. You're turning a 15-minute drive into an hour and 10-minute drive probably by doing this route, which is so unnecessary to do. You understand? Like, there's no reason for a normal person would just go from like Moscow to Pullman on the straight road that connects the two towns. You wouldn't go from Moscow, or allegedly on the night that it happened, he went from Pullman down to Uniontown to Genesee, back up to Moscow, and then went back the other way. Like nobody would do that. Nobody would. You would just take the one road that takes you 10 minutes.
Yeah, the most direct route. Yeah, I don't know about you, but every time I drive somewhere, I take the most direct route. I don't want to drive any longer than I have to. Yeah,
exactly.
And I think it's also interesting that we have note here that after the murders, he goes back so he gets home to his home at 5:30 a.m., which was an apartment house right across the state line from the home where the murders took place. At 9 a.m., his phone begins to move again. And at 9:32 a.m., right after the murders, his phone is picked up near the Moscow murder house. That's very suspicious. Maybe he was driving back to see if the police were there yet or what was going on over there, right?
You said it was a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of mistakes going on. Like, and because of the area, I mean, the only reason I think they were able to find the route, he went on his way out, he went through the upper class part of town, and it's like a maze. There's a lot of twists and turns in that part, and I think the only way that they saw his white car driving away because of some surveillance, property surveillance footage that homeowners may have had in the area. And
Yeah.
he wouldn't see that right there was, there is a way that he could have done this and not have had, it would have been a lot easier. It would have been a lot more difficult for law enforcement to say, oh, we need to look for a white car. There is a way he could have done this. Instead of driving from where he did it, supposedly, and getting in his car and driving away, he got on surveillance footage, and they were able to.
And this is another mistake. And yeah. I think some things that are worthy of considering is that the days where somebody can get away with murder are really gone. I mean, imagine murders before DNA. All they have is like fingerprints. So all you have to do is wear gloves and you could get away with murder. Today, everybody has cameras everywhere, like yes. People have DoorDash cameras or not DoorDash cameras, but you know what I mean? Like there's just, I forget what they're called. We have one, there's, and we could see if somebody drives by our home, it records it. So, it's a lot more difficult to get away with these things. There's a lot more ways to get caught on film. And apparently they have him in multiple locations driving away from the scene. And interesting. And then let's talk about, so after the murders, his father flies to Washington from Pennsylvania, and the two of them go and drive back to Pennsylvania while they are looking for the vehicle. So they're looking for his vehicle. He decides he's going to drive his vehicle back to Pennsylvania with his father. That seems very strange to me, because if let's play devil's advocate. If he's not the murderer, the police are putting out all kinds of bulletins looking for that vehicle. Apparently, he does not respond and say, hey, I have that vehicle, but I wasn't involved or anything like that. Instead, his father flies in from Pennsylvania to Washington, and they decide to drive that vehicle that the police are looking for back to Pennsylvania. That's very suspicious.
Have you seen the traffic stop footage?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Okay. So what happened during finals week is that there was probably close to where he lives. There was a SWAT-related incident in Pullman, and he mentioned that incident in the traffic stop footage in Pennsylvania. There's like, oh, well, where are you coming from? I'm from WSU. Why are you here? I live here. There was a SWAT-related incident in Pullman. I'm driving back home, right? And he could use that as a defense.
And for those unaware, apparently this man was under surveillance, and the FBI or the authorities got him pulled over on purpose because they wanted the people. So in other words, him getting pulled over for minor traffic violations was a ruse. They wanted the body cam footage and to see his hands, to see if he had injuries on his hands. And he was just being surveilled and followed all the way back to Pennsylvania because he was already a suspect, but he wasn't aware of that. He thought he's getting pulled over for a minor traffic violation, like failure to signal before changing lanes and things like this. Twice he was pulled over, and twice they were sort of looking at him and focusing on, I suppose, his hands, I've heard, to see if he had, some sort of defensive wounds or scratches on his hands. But interesting that the police, he had to know that the police were looking for his car, right? That was all over the local media. And instead of volunteering, hey, I have that kind of a car, but I wasn't involved or whatever, he decides to drive the vehicle back to Pennsylvania, perhaps in an effort to get rid of the car, right?
Yes, but how many white Hyundais are there in the local area, right? And then if they got a list of all those, and then they got them matched with their credit cards, right? The FBI could just be like, oh, well, this credit card that belongs to this white car is driving somewhere else. We should check this out. Right. They like I said, it's those days where, they only had fingerprints to go off of are pretty much over. They have data analysts now. They have all
Yeah.
sorts of information.
Credit card. Yeah. Everywhere
Right.
you go, you're tracked with a credit card. If you use a credit card, they know you've been in a store. The stores have surveillance. We see that very, very often now. Like, especially in crime cases, like, this person went into Walmart an hour before they were murdered or whatever, and here's the footage, and we get all that. So if we're getting all that as the public, for sure the police are getting all that as well. And I wanted to talk for a minute about other suspicious things, like apparently Koberger was removing trash from his parents' home and putting it in the neighbors' trash. And just so people are aware, I'm very familiar with the Pocono Mountains and in all the towns. Your neighbor is not right next to you in most cases, so you have to walk a little bit. If I wanted to put my trash where my place is in my neighbor's trash can, it would be a little bit of a walk. You're not just going outside and like in a city and there's trash cans right next to yours that are your neighbors. And apparently he was wearing gloves. So he was observed taking trash from his parents' home and with gloves on and taking it and putting it into his neighbor's trash cans. So do you think that was maybe he was suspicious that they may be onto him and trying to get his DNA, and that's why that was done?
Well, I don't know. I do know that the search on his apartment yielded not so much. That the authorities said they were rather discontent with what they were able to find in his apartment. So he could have gotten a lot of the evidence and taken it to PA to dispose of it potentially. They only found the raid on his apartment, only found a Walmart receipt, 2 Marshall's receipts, which is, it's a town here, right, and not in Pullman. Dust container from a vacuum, multiple hair strands and possible animal hair strands, two cuttings from an uncased pillow with reddish brown stains, 2 top and bottom mattress covers with stains, items with a dark red spots, a computer tower, and a Fire TV stick. That's all.
That's all they had in his apartment. Yeah, that's strange. That's very, very strange. And it is, this guy still essentially. Let's talk for a moment. Have you heard that he has like 4 defense attorneys all of a sudden?
Yes, and there's a major conflict of interest with one of them, actually.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because this is crazy. One of them one of his lawyers has a connection to the victim or victims' families, right?
Yes. There was one of the victims. Right here. One of the victims' mothers had a felony arrest warrant for her arrest in Kootenai County, which is in Coeur d'Alene, north of here, right? She had a felony arrest warrant, and her attorney dropped her case to go and represent him.
Yeah, that's a big problem. So one of this murder suspect's attorneys was representing the mother of one of the victims, and he drops the case to go and represent him.
It's a public defender. Public defender dropped her case, right? And that's highly not ethical, right? You can't.
That's a problem. Yeah, I would assume that's a big problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What else?
Yeah, and you had sent me a video too of driving by, right? I think.
Yes.
Let me see if I can't find that here.
They don't have police at the place. I think it's private security that keeps an eye on the property right now, but it's all taped off, so you can't really.
So we've got thanks to Aaron, we have exclusive footage right at the murder scene that no one's ever seen before.
Well, there was better footage that I sent in. Even the back taped off.
Oh, this is
You
behind
see
the
that tape
property.
right there? I went back that same
All the
afternoon.
neighbors have no under.
Oh, I'm sorry. So there's other. Did you send me other clips?
Yes, I did. I sent it to TruthSeekers
Oh, an email. Okay. All right. Well, let's look at this
telling the
and then
media
we'll
not to
do
knock.
this.
That's the door. That's the house right there. Yeah, as you can see, they've collected every little thing they can get in there.
Yeah, and interesting. You said that the neighbors all have signs on their doors, no comment, because
At least one. At least one.
the media has got to be hounding all the neighbors, right? Because this is such a big story, I suppose.
There was actually, I did want to bring up that one of the neighbors, it's on the police log and discussed on a local Facebook group, where there was 5 people that dressed up pretending to be police officers that went and knocked on the neighbor's door in the middle of the night and were asking questions regarding the case. They were impersonating. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff that people are doing as well. We can get into where there was 5 people that were impersonating a peace officer that went on knocked on the neighbor's door in the middle of the night asking about the case.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. But you know, when you consider them, there's everybody's, I'm sure, got a financial motive for an exclusive story related to this case. It could be worth quite a lot of money. So I guess, you know, some of the slime balls are coming out. And also, we could talk for a moment about that. There is a lot of opportunistic people that are doing things like one person on YouTube somehow connected this Brian Koberger to like 5 other murders. And his only evidence is nonsense. Like, well, there were stabbing murders, so it had to be Brian. Like, this is garbage. And this guy got like 500,000 views and started a whole YouTube channel continually connecting this suspect to all these other murders, trying to make him into some kind of you know, monster serial killer that killed 20 people before this. And there's just little or no evidence of these connections.
Another one that I heard of is that, well, 2 of the victims were employees at a restaurant downtown called the Mad Greek, and this restaurant sells vegan meals.
Yeah,
and
that's the same person that's connecting all these things. Yeah,
but the owner of the restaurant said that's not true. That he's never been associated with that restaurant at all. So a lot of people are showing their crazy side. I think a professor at the University of Idaho had to engage in a slander lawsuit against other content creators online for being told that they had something to do with it as well. Like, there was content creators going around saying, well, this professor had something to do with it. So now there's a slander lawsuit going on with that. And yeah, the hotels here are getting packed for the June hearings here. People are going to start showing up or reserving to come here and see what happens. But yeah, a lot of people do crazy things. Like, especially, I feel bad for the neighbors. You shouldn't have to have people impersonating police officers show up at your front door asking questions about the case.
yeah. Well, you could imagine I can imagine there's quite a media frenzy there, because it seems to be that every media outlet wants some kind of a story about this situation. Do we know when any sort of trial is going to be taking place? This is going to be a while, right?
Mid-June.
Wow.
Mid-June. So right now he's sitting in jail down the street, but he's just going to sit there eating vegan food for as long as until June.
Oh, that's right. That you have the right, I guess, as a prisoner. They have to give you vegan food if you request it. Well, yeah. Interesting. And so not until June will we know more. And it's interesting that you mentioned there's a gag order. So nobody involved with the case is allowed to say anything. So these things that are coming out, a lot of which, there's a lot of things that are basically just leaks, right? Which are in some cases unconfirmed. We should stress that, you know. I mean, some of the things we know for a fact because they were in the probable cause affidavit, you have to, which was released, but right. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it seems to me that there's a lot of disinformation or misinformation. And I want to be very clear that some of the things that we're talking about, of course, is speculation. Some things did come from the probable cause affidavit that we could be sure of. Let's talk for a minute about the DNA matching, because that was interesting. Apparently, they took trash from the father's trash and they matched it to the knife sheath. But then, do we know that they later matched it to Brian, the DNA from the knife sheath?
Well, his neighbor claims that the suspect had told him that he had submitted his DNA in the past to be put on a database, right?
Okay.
So they could have just used that if that's accurate, right? But I've heard of other cases as well where even if you didn't submit your DNA, right, if your sibling submitted your DNA and you're like the only brother that they have, you're the only one with a Y chromosome, so right, it must like, oh well, it's a sibling of this person, right? And then it's like, oh, but they only have one male, like, you know.
Yeah, and for those unaware, we're talking about these genealogical databases, like when people go to 23andMe and these other things to get their DNA analyzed to find out, you know, like what their ethnic makeup is. Those things get put in that database, and those companies will cooperate with authorities. That's how they solved the Golden State murder case. They got a familial match, and then they worked back from there. So in this case, apparently they matched the DNA on the knife sheet first to this Brian Koberger's father and then to him, which is interesting. And they could get that DNA from your trash too. People don't realize it, but if you drink a soda and throw it in the trash, your DNA is on that rim of that can, or whatever, you know.
What would really, I think, be enough for a conviction for this guy is that if there is pet hair that got on him, and then that pet hair was later found at his apartment, that's beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Like, I know that there was regularly parties at that house with over 100 people in them. So, I mean, that's about the only thing that the defense could say is that, oh, well, he went to a party at that house before he did this, and then he got the pet hair, and then it ended up at his apartment. But if that gets blown out of the water, how did the pet hair end up in your apartment, right? So,
and also we should mention that this is got to be it had to be a problematic crime scene, right? Because this is basically, I remember college party houses. Like, there's people in and out of these college party houses every day.
You saw like a mule or an animal at one?
I saw him. Yeah, one time I was at a college party. I think it was somewhere, and there was somebody had a donkey. Just a donkey walking through this party house, and everybody was drunk and laughing, and somebody tried to ride the donkey, and it was weird. Yeah, so problematic crime scene because you got 50 people coming in and out of there. So when you find a hair, you don't know if it's the murderers, the victims, or one of the 50 people that have been in and out of there recently, you know. But I think also we should talk about the police, because for a while the police were under intense pressure and people were saying they weren't doing enough. They weren't communicating, and even one of the victims' fathers was very upset with them, but he later apologized, because it appears that they got onto this Brian Koberger right away, but they were staying silent about it, right?
Well, there was on YouTube, there's a retired New York City detective who criticized the Moscow PD for failing to do proper searches. There was no grid search, or I think there was no grid or spiral search done, and they mishandled a lot of or they didn't do it well. I mean, like I said, this stuff doesn't really happen here, right? Like, the staff probably does. Everybody was probably surprised at what happened.
I mean, in their defense, this is some little podunk town. No offense, Aaron, I know you live there, but
it's a beautiful place. But
but this is some little podunk town. They don't have quadruple homicides all the time like New York City does, or whatever. So maybe they didn't even, have a procedure in place for what to do here. They're flying by the seat of their pants. But to their credit, I'm aware that they instantly brought in experts from the FBI, experts from
Yeah.
other jurisdictions uh, right away. And that may have led to why, it's very probable that if they didn't do their job well, this person would have got away with this, right?
There was one thing, like, I think for me, it just, I think his biggest, like, what happened is that he used his car so close to what he did. So where he did the crime allegedly, the car was really close by. There was a way that he could have done this and not had his car so close by. Had he parked his car at the local arboretum parking lot, he could have, right,
Yeah,
potentially
walked
not.
from his car, did the murder, walked back to his car, and then they wouldn't have
There's
caught
no
his car.
surveillance. There's no surveillance on the way the arboretum is right next to where the crime happened. Had he, like, allegedly, if he's the one that did it, not put your car so close to what he did, and instead put it some distance away and know that you're not going to be monitored through the arboretum, they would have made it a lot more difficult for law enforcement to get a suspect. But that's not what happened, along with other mistakes that you've claimed that he made, like the sheath with the DNA. And it's very surprising for somebody with such an education to have.
Yeah, and there may be boot prints outside as well in the snow that they made casts of. So, but I didn't see anything in the probable cause affidavit about the boots or the boot prints. That may also have been just a police officer's boot print, because apparently it was a very common boot, like a military style boot. And also, I noticed from his social media that he was following a lot of, I guess, what I'm familiar with are what I would call tactical gear companies. In other words, companies that sell military clothing, knives, body armor, things of that nature. And interesting that he was following those kind. And also on his social media was some very disturbing posts, somebody murdering people and things like that, pools of blood being cleaned up. So this guy was really described as kind of a weird guy, I guess, by his social media. And also apparently had many fake, or let's call them anonymous, social media accounts, which is a little strange to me, why he would have so many. It would seem to me like if you're trying to conceal what you're looking at or doing online, you wouldn't do it with your real name. You would do it with what I guess you would commonly call a sock account, right? Like,
or an alias, or
an alias or something like that. So apparently he was following a lot of weird, sick stuff on these alt accounts, but the police were able to. And that's another interesting part. I don't know if you've heard, but a lot of his social media accounts disappeared shortly after his arrests. Were wiped.
Yeah, that's weird. That's weird. I was not aware of that. But
yeah, and again, so
well, here, like, what I would want to know is go through his social media history and see if there's any indicator of being an incel or being somebody who has trouble, because that would have been like, if he did snap and he hadn't, like, if he hadn't done this in the past and he actually went ahead and snapped and did this all at once, right? The incel angle to this would have, right? Incel people, I don't think they're not the kind of people to go out and like do this 20 times before they, right? It just doesn't.
They normally snap and do it once. Yeah.
Right. So what if is there, go through his social media and see if there's any hints of this. Well, actually, there was. He did that. There allegedly he did display that behavior with other people.
Yeah,
well, at a bar or with nurses as well, allegedly.
Yeah, at a local bar, it is said that he was on sort of their trouble customer list because he was nasty and rude to the female staff there. And also, kind of, this guy also bragged that he could bang any woman that he wanted or something like that, which is an odd thing for a guy that has trouble with women to be running around boasting. I don't know, but to most people, including former students of him, he was described as arrogant, but very high intellect. Like, he was very intelligent,
yes.
But he was arrogant. and sort of just off. People said he was a little strange. He was a little off, which I guess would fit the profile of somebody who would suddenly snap and kill 4 people, right?
Right, which is I don't think that it's possible he didn't go around doing this before. And I if he was an incel, if he does have that dynamic going on, and because I don't think that there is such thing as an incel. I think it's a matter of low self-esteem or whatever. But if he did snap, yeah.
Yeah, and just so people are aware, there are forums and websites for these guys that they get together and essentially they blame women for all their problems, right? They claim to be involuntary celibate. They want to be with a woman, especially attractive women. They tend to make those attractive women the enemy and the cause of all their problems. It's their fault that they're not in a relationship. These women are the problem. And these guys get together, and there have been cases of this before where guys on these forums, they get together, they're hateful towards women, they're blaming women for all their problems. They get together, some of these guys snap and go kill a woman or women because of their frustrations somehow, blaming the women for their lack of success with women. It doesn't, I don't know, to me it doesn't make sense.
He claims a psychological condition where he has, it's called, I think he calls it like supposedly, if it was him on those forums, calling it like a whiteout or something, where right. Well, he's not like an ugly guy, right? Like there must be something like wrong with him as far as like socializing with like women if he was an incel. Because I mean, like I said, I don't really think that there is such thing as like an incel. It's like somebody who doesn't want to who has problems, like maybe relating to people or something else that like.
Yeah, and also some guys just don't. I don't know. Some guys I've known guys that were just like a little bit off. Like they they were guys that were. I've known guys that were like just incredibly not successful, live at home with mom and dad, kind of losers, and then they would get upset because they asked out some 10 super hot girl who said not interested. You know what I mean? Like there's some sort of disconnect with some of these guys.
Like a social disconnect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like just socially awkward and disconnected from reality. You got to know what's within your realm of possibility.
Right. Right. Like yeah, somebody out of your league. You got to be there. You got to be like realistic about certain things in life.
This is just a weird phenomenon.
And there are people who have trouble like seeing that as like those social dynamics that play out, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, I've seen guys who blame the women, like I remember one time I was somewhere and this guy in a bar somewhere, and he was talking about this woman across the bar, like, oh my God, this woman's so beautiful, I want to marry her, look at her, she's perfect. And then he goes over and talks to her and she blows him off, and he comes back to us and we go, what happened? And he says, she's a dyke. Like just blame the woman. It's her fault that she's not interested. And this is a weird societal thing. This incel thing is a recent phenomenon in the last, I don't know, 10 or 20 years this popped up. But it is kind of crazy that there's forums where guys get together just to hate on women. It's
Well, what's crazier? Allegedly, now that all this is getting out, allegedly he's in jail right now, and he's getting love letters from dozens of people.
That's a strange phenomenon.
So
did Ted Bundy. So did many serial killers. Got fan letters from attractive females that wanted to start a relationship with them. Ted Bundy and all these other serial killers. That's a weird thing.
Like this guy, he's a suspect, and you're gonna send him letters and all this stuff. It's I think Manson as well, right? Manson, where I think he had a child. Like
we'll take some comments and questions. I heard this as well. Melinda says he was messaging one of the victims repeatedly, and she didn't respond to him. So that could be, again, some kind of spurned attempt at starting a relationship with one of them. That could be. I mean, I can't think of other motives for him. the incel theory seems to fit the best from what I've heard from, now we have some of his former friends, even a girl that he dated one time. I heard, like, literally everybody that ever knew this guy is doing interviews now. And most say that he was very socially awkward, arrogant, and had problems with women. He was on, in a local bar, he was on a trouble list. Like, this guy's a trouble customer because he was rude and nasty to the female staff or aggressive with them. So he gets put on a trouble list. People are saying that he's arrogant and socially awkward, has problems with women.
Narcissism, perhaps, even, right? Some sort of narcissism, but at the same time, some sort of social, like, and I don't want to say ineptitude. I don't think that's the correct word, but having trouble with relationships with people and also having narcissistic tendencies at the same time. Possible.
Yeah, this is interesting. Some people think he wanted to be caught or at least accepted it. He had to know, as a criminology PhD student, he had to know how difficult it is to get away with something like this. He had to know. You're always going to make a mistake. I think a mistake for him was that knife sheath, because even wearing gloves, whatever, you might get a skin cell or something on that knife sheath.
Could this be a thing, like, where he wanted to get caught to feed his narcissism, if he is a narcissistic person? Possibly.
Yeah, well, apparently he was fascinated with killers like BTK and the Green River Killer and others. For all we know, he was a big fan of serial killers and planned to be one, and this was his first attempt at it. But I still find it odd if this was his first murder, that he killed 4 people at once. That's a hell of, and you would have to be. This guy has to be arrogant to think that he's going to kill 4 people and somehow get away with it, perhaps through his knowledge of criminology. And we've got statements from the lawyers which basically said he's anxious to get back to Idaho and prove his innocence, so he waived his extradition hearing, which I don't know what we can take from that, but the extradition hearing is kind of a formality. They were going to extradite him, so maybe he just chose to get it over with and just agree to go back. But through his lawyer, he said he was anxious to get back to Idaho and prove his innocence, and that he was shocked at his arrest. So he's got to have some kind of a defense plan here.
Right. Could he might? Well, honestly, I sent you an image where he did not answer whether he was coerced or not, in whatever statements that he made. So maybe that might be part of his defense, to say that he was coerced into doing this, and say that he acted alone, or that he didn't act alone, or that he may have been an accessory to it under duress.
Yeah, that's another interesting point. When he was arrested, he asked the police if they arrested anyone else. Now, that may be him trying to throw off the police, but it's very possible that he didn't act alone, because 4 people, murdering 4 people, maybe 2 guys went in and he was one of them. We don't know yet, but more will be coming out as the case progresses, right?
Yeah,
and Anthony is a retired police officer, so he has some insight, and he says, thank God they caught this guy. He could have gone on a rampage. Yeah. I mean, it could have been a mass shooting next, or something. If you imagine what he would do if he wasn't arrested, he would think, I just got away with murdering 4 people. Maybe next time I'll kill 8 people or something. This could have gone a whole different way, right?
Well, people were hesitant to come back to class or for the new semester, or even.
Yeah, Brian Koberger is the name of the suspect arrested. And we want to stress, of course, for legal reasons, that all parties discussed here are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. He has been arrested for the crime of multiple crimes of murder, but he has not been convicted or found guilty yet. And Aaron says the case should begin around June. Is that going to be, boy, do you think case is going to, I think it's going to be this is going to be the biggest murder case, televised murder case, probably since OJ.
That's crazy for a small town like this. That's I
Yeah, I'm
never
sorry.
heard
His
of.
words were, he's eager to be exonerated.
That's very arrogant or narcissistic. Of if that's crazy. That's crazy.
James Holt or James Holmes, serial killer with a llama fetish. That's weird. Jimmy's llama is a Q-related blogger with a crush on him. Just weird. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I'm wondering what's going to happen next, because also we should also be aware, right, Aaron, that this probable all the information about the forensic evidence and the evidence that they have against him wasn't in that probable cause affidavit. They've got a lot more, I
They
think.
they do, but they're not going to release it, and they can't. There's an order for no parties can say anything. So for the moment, what we got is what we got, right? And
Yeah, we're not going to get more information until the case begins. The case actually begins.
anything going forward might be people trying to mislead or have uh, mislead or misinformation.
Yeah, blacklisted says people revere serial killers. It's quite sick. Yeah, and also, for all we know, that America's fascination with serial killers may be what caused this guy to do this. You got to imagine this guy being so narcissistic and arrogant. Maybe thought he would get away with it and be famous as a serial killer, like some of his. If it's true that he was so interested in this BTK, there's even some information. BTK killer's daughter said that he may have been in contact with her father. So he may have been writing letters to serial killers in prison and talking to them, and
That might be
I can
used against him.
imagine. Yeah, I can imagine though that if a serial killer is sitting in prison bored and somebody writes him and says, "Hey, I'm a PhD student in criminology. I'm interested in your case," they could strike up a relationship very quickly and easily.
Right.
Do you think if he is the murderer and he wasn't caught, there would have been more murderers in your area?
Wow, that's a good question. That if he's the one that did it and he wasn't caught, there could have been more. There could have been more because it's not. It doesn't seem like the type to just go somewhere else, right? It almost seems like he wants to be caught. So maybe he could have kept doing it until he got caught, but we don't know that.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Well, do you recall ever seeing him around your campus though? Did he look familiar to you when you saw his arrest?
No, because it's WSU. I've never attended WSU. Those are like two universities that are rival universities, right? So WSU is like 15 minutes down the road. It's a whole nother town with like 30,000 people in it, and this town is a little smaller than that, and it's another university.
Yeah, and Kalani is confirming what you said. They didn't find much in his apartment or in his WSU office, just some hairs and some cold stained things like a pillow. No knife of any sort, pocket, kitchen, etc. That he didn't even have kitchen knives in his apartment. That's weird. No shoes, no clothes. Wow, that's interesting. Why would he have no shoes or no clothes in his apartment? Most people have clothes and shoes where they live. And no kitchen knife? He got rid
yeah,
of the kitchen knives? That's weird. That's very, very strange. Very, very strange. And I think it's really eerie if it is true. If we look at this from the lens of a killer, the fact that he was teaching classes in criminology where the students were discussing the case of the murder, even asking him what he thought about it, right? And he's the murderer. And then people are discussing these murders online on Reddit and other websites. And he is allegedly going on to Reddit and correcting people, about how the murders took place and the details of who was killed first. That's pretty arrogant and pretty eerie, right?
it's almost like he couldn't help himself if he's the one that did it, and he's like, "Well, no, I'm going to tell you how it happened," right? Like, can't help
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah, and Melinda is here and says he applied to be a researcher with the Moscow police. That came out recently. You
Hmm.
know, yeah, that's pretty crazy, right?
Well, I wouldn't
And
want him to be a cop.
Sandy Smith says, I wonder if the victims were restrained in any fashion. It would have been very difficult to it not have at least one escaping when his attention was elsewhere. Well, apparently, not that I'm aware of, but that could be the case. It appears that he took them out one at a time and they were sleeping and may have been, all four of them may have been intoxicated. This
They
was
were
4 in the
intoxicated.
morning. Yeah, 4 in the morning after a long night of drinking, sort of passed out drunk in their beds, and along comes this guy and apparently kills them one by one. But it is eerie. The other eerie thing is that the surviving roommates on the first floor, she heard some things, came out of her room a bunch of times. And the last time she came out of her room, she saw what she thought was a black figure with a mask on run by her door and or walk by her door. I don't know if he saw her or not, but she saw him, and then he went out the sliding glass doors, which is apparently the way that he made entry to the home. And then she locked her door and went back to bed. And she's getting a lot of heat from people
The defense
because,
is going to use that a lot because it's like, well, why? Maybe she had something to do with it. Why were the cops called until noon the next day?
yeah,
Right?
so it is a little strange. But you also have to remember that that girl may have been intoxicated. That girl may have been on drugs and just scared, or maybe she thought it was sort of a prank. Like I said, if you've ever been to a college party house, there's people coming in and out, maybe wearing masks. Like I mentioned, I was at a college party house once and suddenly there was a donkey walking through the house. So strange things happen. Maybe she, in her defense, maybe, and I'm sure she's really broken up about this because, yeah, if she had called the police right away, maybe some of the victims hadn't died yet and they could have got medical attention and survived. So I'm sure that she's ridden with guilt over not calling sooner, but she may have been intoxicated. She may have thought it was a prank. There was parties there constantly. Maybe it's somebody coming in or out. Maybe it's maybe she thought maybe it was a mask like a COVID mask, not a ski mask. She was intoxicated. She locked her door, went to bed, and the victims weren't found until later that day around noon. Right, Aaron?
It was supposedly two people that were in the house. It's a 3-story house, and the thing that's surprising about the house is how small the square area of the floors are himself. It's not a very big house. It's probably about the size of a 2-bedroom apartment, except like 3 stories tall.
Yeah, like
Right?
we call that a trinity in Philadelphia from where I'm from. It's like one room, one room, one room.
Yeah, but it's like a 2-bedroom apartment on each floor, maybe a little less even. It's not that big, which is right. And there's a lot of people. Like the next lot has like 100 people living in an apartment complex, and then there's so many people around there. Like somebody must have heard something, but nobody. I mean, only the 2 people that were left alive upstairs claimed to have heard something. But that was, I mean, again, the defense will use like, why didn't they call the cops? What did they have something to do with it, right? But yeah, it must be catching a lot of heat.
Yeah, and that's honestly what I'm worried. I worry when I see only the evidence in the probable cause affidavit. But again, I was reminded by somebody that's in law enforcement. Oh no, he told me, oh no, Stephen, they've got a lot more. They don't put everything in there. They wait until the trial. They've got a lot more on that guy than they put. They put just enough in the probable cause affidavit to get the judge to sign off on the arrest. They only have to show enough that there's probable cause for the arrest. They have more information, but I'm very concerned with reasonable doubt because like I said, he could say, oh, that murder sheath with my skin cells on it, somebody stole that from me. It was taken out of my car. I dropped it when I was hiking. Whatever. He could say anything, and he could try to explain away those his car being near the scene of the crime 12 times as anything. Oh, I have insomnia. I drive around at night or whatever. All it takes is one one member of the jury to be not sure, for him to get off. But I'm
There,
hopeful that they have a lot more evidence and they'll get more evidence.
I think that I heard that there was concerns regarding getting a not biased jury. Like, there's not a lot of people in this town, and a lot of people feel very strongly about this. So if it's going to be like a Latah County jury, would it be a fair jury? There was some discussion about that. I'm not exactly sure how the laws work in this state.
They may move it. Yeah, they may move it
Ada
to
County.
a different venue. They may move it to a different venue, right?
They might move it down to Boise. And then, I mean, and then that might come with its own, right?
Archaic revival. See, this is what I'm talking about. So you gotta. What I think is that surviving victim is going to be suffering from tremendous survivor's guilt, and she's going to feel terrible for the rest of her life for not having called the police right away, or whatever. Archaic revival says was at a college party and a dude walked in wearing mirrored scale mail asses chaps. So weird things happen in these college party houses all the time. She may have just, certainly, I'm sure the first thing that popped in her head wasn't a murderer came in here and killed all my roommates just now. You know, it's unfortunate, but yeah, it's just. But how eerie must that woman feel the next day, knowing that all those people were killed? And for those unaware, the roommates thought that they were unconscious or something. They knocked on their doors and nobody answered upstairs, right, in the other areas of the house,
right?
And they were concerned, so they called the police, and the police arrived.
Another thing that the defense could use is that the 911 call wasn't over concerns of a homicide; it was over concerns of non-responsiveness, right? But
Yeah.
like, you're not gonna like realize that some, I mean, the graphic details of the aftermath of what happened. Like, how are you not gonna notice those details, right? Like, why would you say that that person was not responsive? Why can't you say, well, I see a bunch of red everywhere, right? And then that could be used as well by the defense.
Yeah, Wesley says he could have given the real killer the knife to use. And he asked if anyone else has been arrested, not knowing the killer made a mistake, leaving the knife cover behind. Could be. And a lot of people have suggested that he left that knife sheath on purpose to throw off the police because it was a U.S. Marines sheath and he wasn't a U.S. Marine. So maybe drop that on purpose so the police think that it's somebody in the military was involved. There's so many possibilities that this case makes my head spin. And I don't know about you, Aaron, but I just want to get to the trial and hear all the information. And you're right, this gag order is very frustrating because it leads to a lot of misinformation out there, and we don't know if what we're hearing is accurate in many cases. And I just want to hear the case and get all of the information out there. But I understand, they got to keep it.
I will give you one last bit of just kind of like an irrelevant point almost. Right around like a day or two after it happened, like I frequent the local gas station at around 12:30 quite often. And I was talking to the cashier there, and she said that they found a bag with blood in the garbage can, and they called the Moscow PD to check it out. They're not, but it's probably like hunting related. Somebody probably went hunting.
Oh, that's gross. Yeah.
Right. And they probably
it could be related. Yeah.
It could be related. Right. So it's like, imagine if that happened where like after it happened, he dropped like a bag full of blood in the garbage can at the gas station. Right. And they ended up calling the police over it, but it's probably just hunting related. But that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Aaron, we'll close with this. What is the mood around the campus now that they've arrested the suspect? Is everybody taking like sort of breathed a sigh of relief? Is the general consensus that they got the right guy and everybody feels a little safer now, or what is it like?
No, yeah. I would say that's about it. Yeah, I think most people are pretty convinced at this point. But given what's been put out so far, most people are convinced that the suspect will be found guilty. But the atmosphere's calmed down. There are I still go to the library every night and come back. There are no more state police. There are no more cops.
So the police presence has ramped down since the arrest.
There's no police almost anywhere anymore. Everybody's calm now about it. Everybody's certain that that person is the correct person that they got. Yeah, generally, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. I hope that they did get the right guy. And I for one, sure hope that he's convicted. I mean, there's always a possibility there won't be a trial. If there's going to be, do you know in Idaho, is there the death penalty?
Yes, that's on the table right now.
So that's on
But
the table for him. You kill 4 people, you
yeah,
got a real good possibility of the death penalty. He
no, he
might plead.
qualifies. He qualifies for a death penalty about 3 times over right now because it was if you kill somebody while you're killing somebody else in Idaho, that gets you for the death penalty. In
Yeah.
the manner in which it was done. So he qualifies for a death penalty like 3 or 4, like 3 to 5 times at least that I could think of off the top of my head. The thing is, I think it has to be a unanimous jury. So if they move it down to Ada County, it's less likely to happen.
Yeah, but still, when the death
Right.
penalty is on the table, a lot of these guys plead because they'd rather do
Right.
life in prison. So he might take a plea deal for life in prison, and there won't be a trial. But
But he's so
given this
arrogant.
guy's, he's
So
so yeah. I was
arrogant.
just gonna say that. Given this guy's level of arrogance and how he thinks he's better than everybody and smarter than everybody, I still think he thinks he's going to get away with this, and he's going to go to trial.
Could you imagine if he does get away with this? Like what that would be like the history that would be bigger. I mean, that would be like OJ. Like I mean, right? I mean, but that would
Yeah.
be that would be really like big news, right?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming here and starting our series on this. Maybe we'll do another update when the trial comes around or when we actually have new or real information. It's very frustrating now. I keep trying to find more information, but there's very little out there until the case progresses, right? Until we get to the actual case. And I'm sure it's going to be televised and we'll get every sort of detail eventually, right?
Yes, and it's not the trial; it's the preliminary hearing in June. So it's gonna
Oh,
be a
so it's
while.
still going to be a while before the trial then. Yeah, preliminary
Right,
hearing. Yeah.
right.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for joining us, and you're always welcome to come back. We're going to be covering other true crime stuff if you're interested. But this one, I thought for sure you got to come on, Aaron. You live right there,
Well, thank you so much for having me, Stephen. I'm a huge fan of the show, and I watch every night. And it was just great to
Great.
be able to be here.
Yeah. Great. See, I'm going to be anytime I meet somebody like you, as soon as you told me where you were from, I'm like, do you know about this item, these murders? Yeah, it's just it's good synchronicity, and thanks for going and getting the footage and sharing your thoughts, especially from the local residents. It's good to see how they feel or what people are saying right there in the area.
Right. Anyway, well, thank you so much, Stephen, for having me on.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks very much. All right, friends. So we have successfully gotten through another episode tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We have another great show for you. I am doubling up today, and we are going to have an interview tonight with Brian Dunning from Skeptoid Media. Brian is an incredible author, researcher, and interested in all things strange and mysterious, but leads towards the skeptical and scientific side. He runs a nonprofit called Skeptoid Media, and you really want to be here tonight for that. It's going to be a great interview. I'll take a few questions or comments. What if he didn't do it? Well, I think it would be an incredible turn of events if it turned out that he was innocent. But I'm open to the possibility, but I think there's just too much evidence pointing right at him. I can't imagine them finding him innocent, but stranger things have happened. Blacklisted, he will drag out the trial for publicity. Yeah, I think he's going to enjoy being the center of attention, being so arrogant and self-important. I agree with you 100%, Blacklisted. And by the way, I wanted to mention, I see a lot of new faces here in the description, or excuse me, here in the live chat that we haven't seen before. True crime is not our usual wheelhouse, but it's one of my other great interests and passions. So we will be pursuing more of it. I'm going to just check in with a few things real quickly, and we will remind you that we are a viewer-supported show, and we, one second here, let me just check in with that. And we appreciate all of your support. We have a Patreon or a channel membership where you get some extra goodies. I am going to let our friend Ian tell you about that. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Usually we cover many strange and esoteric topics from conspiracy land, but we will be venturing into the world of true crime a little more now. I'm hopeful that we're going to do at least one of these shows a week. So if you enjoy that sort of thing, please, or the strange or esoteric stuff that we cover, please do subscribe. We would like to see you, and we appreciate all of you new viewers. If you are new to our channel, I have some other true crime here, including a series called Murder in UFO Land, as well as one episode, which we will be updating shortly, of a series called Getting Away with Murder, where I am investigating a 30-year-old double murder cold case in my hometown here where I live of Warminster, Pennsylvania. That's called Getting Away with Murder. You could check our previous videos. So we do have a little bit of true crime stuff here, and hopefully we will have more soon. Here's Ian to let you know how you could support our show.
Truth Seekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal, or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Campion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truth Seekers. Thank you for your generosity and support. Thanks for being here. This is Truth Seekers with your host, Stephen Campion. Please rate, like, and comment on our videos or podcasts. If you are listening to an audio podcast, please rate us 5 stars to help us rise in the search rankings. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to an audio podcast, we love and appreciate you listeners, but you are missing the live tapings. All our shows are recorded live with video feed. We'd love you to come be a part of our live broadcasts and tapings for the podcast. Head on over to YouTube, click the search tool, the little magnifying glass, put Truth Seekers, one word in the search bar, and hit enter. You'll see a strange and mysterious guy with sunglasses. That means you found the channel. Go there, smash the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to receive up-to-date info on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to be a part of our live taping and our chat room during the live broadcasts. Seek the truth. Speak the truth. This is Truth Seekers. Truth Seekers. Truth Seekers.
Yeah, and we are back. So I want to thank all of you guys for coming here, especially since this isn't our usual sort of topics. And like I said, I saw many new people here in the live chat. Melinda says, I've been following a while, just don't get to catch lives often or chat. It's a crack up to see you go after all those super soldiers. I'm sorry, but I grew up, Melinda, reading Captain America comic books, and I know all about the super soldier serum and everything. And it's just so funny to me that these guys have superpowers. In fact, I don't know if you were aware, Melinda, but I challenged Randy Kramer to a boxing match so he can prove that he has superpowers. And he declined. He didn't want to do it. But I did offer him $10,000 to do a boxing match with me, and I thought that he should be able to easily. He should be able to beat me up because he has superpowers. But apparently, Mr. Kramer did not want to take part in that. It was going to be for charity. I thought it was a good idea. Here we see. Truthseekers Promotions presents pound for pound $10,000 prize. Who's fooling who? Cambion versus Kramer. And it does say that superpowers strictly prohibited, but that's kind of a joke. The point of it was to allow him to prove that he has superpowers. Isn't it interesting that none of these guys want to prove that they have the superpowers, right? None of them want to prove it. Interesting. So I don't know. It's a strange sort of hobby of mine to listen to these guys tell their superpowers. There's Hulks. There's guys that claim that they have superpowers like the Incredible Hulk. Some of them are like Captain America. One guy's got lasers that pop out of his forearms and stuff, but he can't show them to you. It's just ridiculous, right? Yes, and I want to remind Star Hunter saying, don't forget Patreon and Twitter. For those unaware, I'm going to show you. Let's see if we can't. Let's see if I can't show you. A few people ask me what you get in the Patreon or for being a member. You get some extra goodies, including early access. So I will show you right here. We've had four members videos this month, but those are early access. We've got Elena Danyan tries to climb over Corey Good and become the next SSP superstar. We've got a video, Randy melts down, threatens violence. One question caused all this. This is when he was forced to answer questions about he's a fake Marine and a fake Navy SEAL. So we've got all the records to prove that. He was forced on a show to answer about that, and he started threatening violence and cursing and screaming. We've got a bonus video, Corey Good, deposition fallout, the lies and contradictions, and a new music video for me with AI artist Sheila Aliens. And these are all early access videos. So those will debut sometime this weekend. This is our new plan. What I'm doing now is those short produced videos with all the bells and whistles, the music and better production, better sound. Those are all being released to Patreon and members. And then on the weekends, they will debut. And these are short videos, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10-minute videos. These aren't the long form videos. And just so you're aware, all of our content will always be free, though perhaps ad supported. You have to, we're available on all audio podcast networks. We're available on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, and more. So all of our content is free. We're viewer supported though. So if you enjoy what we do, throw a couple bucks in our hat and help us continue this journey. But all of our content is always free, with few exceptions. There's a monthly show journal, sort of a backstage pass, and some other things for the Patreon supporters and channel members. But if you're a big fan of the show and you're really I understand it's a tough economy, just email me if you want those extra goodies. If there's other ways that you could support our show other than having, I don't want anybody to not be able to get that stuff. I hate putting things behind a paywall, but it's a necessary thing to keep things going, right? Melinda says, Randy Kramer name sounds familiar, probably met him. Well, sorry to hear that. And Melinda was good friends with Aaron Green Hicks years ago. Yeah, I wonder where all those people are, right? Pretty interesting. Yes, and Spreaker, Odyssey, and Rumble. Yes, you can get our audio podcast anywhere pods are cast. We're on everywhere. And we appreciate all of you audio podcast listeners. I do want to give you guys a shout out because I don't know why, but suddenly the audio podcast is really bumping and there's lots of activity over there that wasn't really there before. So we want to recognize and thank you guys. Good to see. And as far as audio podcasts, we're available on Spreaker Podcast Player, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Good Pods, Castbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, and GeoSavin. So basically, anywhere you get your audio podcasts, you'll be able to find us. Just search for Truth Seekers and look for the strange guy with sunglasses. That would be me. And we appreciate all of you out there. So I want to remind you that we will be doing another show tonight at our usual time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And for those who asked, we're going to be throwing in some bonus shows, and this will be the time for those bonus shows will be 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. And some of these bonus shows will be not in our usual wheelhouse. And given that they're not, I thought it'd be best to just do our normal shows every week at 9 p.m. Eastern time, covering normal topics that we've been covering for quite some time. But when we have one of these true crime shows or other shows, those will be at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. And tonight we have a conversation with Brian Dunning from Skeptoid Media, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of things: UFOs, Bigfoot, conspiracy theories, chemtrails, all of it. And Brian's going to be a great guest, great author. You can find his books on Amazon and more. So we'll be back 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight. I hope you'll be here with us. And so that's all I got for you for now. And do me a favor, if you enjoy this true crime sort of a show, let me know in the comments that you want to see more of this. Because I would like to, if the viewers would like to see it, we'll bring it to you. Let me know in the comments if there's other cases you would like to hear more about, or I may be doing some more investigation type shows into different cases. Let me know in the comments what it is that you guys would like to see, and we'll try to bring it to you. So that's all we got for you. I am going to be back at 9 p.m. Eastern time this evening with a great guest, Brian from Skeptoid Media. And if you haven't checked out him, you got to check him out. You will truly enjoy his content. And very scientific investigation sort of based. I love Skeptoid. It's just a great resource. And I consider it a great resource like mine, where you can go to his YouTube channel if you want to know the truth behind certain conspiracy theories like Q or chemtrails. You just look it up, put it in his search bar, and they've done a show breaking it all down for you. It's a tremendous resource, and it's a nonprofit organization, which I love. So that's all I got for you. We'll be back 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight. I hope you'll be here with us. I will be here. Hope to see you too. Until next time. Oh, you know what? I have to do a different bumper. I almost, we have a different out here if I could find it, right? Yeah. So until next time, friends, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night and God bless all of you.